Imagine a story so shocking, so impossible, that it almost sounds like fiction. A powerful senator, a woman enslaved by the very society he represented, and in 1841, they made a choice that defied every law, every expectation, and every social rule of the time. They married in secret. Think about that for a moment. In a world where slavery was legal, where society demanded strict hierarchies, and where exposure could destroy reputations, this union was unimaginable, yet it happened. And what followed would shock even the most skeptical observer. At first glance, this story seems like a simple tale of forbidden love, but it is far more complex. It is a story of courage, fear, and impossible choices. It is about the dangerous intersections of power, privilege, and humanity, and it is about the consequences that follow when personal decisions collide with a society unwilling to bend its rules. This is not just history, it is a lesson in risk, secrecy, and the hidden truths that can change lives forever. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how this senator and his enslaved spouse navigated a world stacked against them. You will learn the risks they took, the decisions they hid, and the consequences they could never have predicted. You will see why this story remains one of the most mysterious and debated events of its era, and most importantly, you will discover how one secret choice in a single moment can ripple through history in ways few could imagine. The intrigue begins with power. A man in a position of influence, accustomed to control, faced with the reality of a woman he could not legally claim as an equal, and yet he chose to act on his convictions, his desires, and perhaps even his conscience. The society around him would have condemned him. The law offered no protection. Every person, from colleagues to neighbors, could have unraveled the secret in an instant. Yet the marriage happened. How, why, and what came next? This story is not just about scandal or gossip. It is about understanding the tension between personal morality and societal expectation. It is about courage under pressure, and the hidden lives of people who dared to act differently when the world demanded conformity. Every choice they made was layered with risk, and every secret they kept added to the suspense. The story we are about to explore reveals the fragile balance between power, secrecy, and humanity in a time when stepping outside the rules could destroy everything. So stay with me until the end, because what you are about to hear is more than a tale of scandal. It is a glimpse into a world where love, danger, and secrecy collided, and where one impossible choice left a mark on history that continues to puzzle scholars today. By the time this video is over, you'll see not just the story of a senator and his enslaved spouse, but a story that challenges everything we think we know about courage, risk, and the human heart. Before we talk about the senator's secret marriage, we need to understand the world he lived in. The year was 1841, a time when slavery was still legal in many states across the country. Enslaved people were considered property, not human beings with rights. Their lives were controlled by laws that allowed owners to buy, sell, and punish without consequence. In this environment, any action that questioned the system of slavery was dangerous, not just socially, but legally. Society at the time was deeply hierarchical. The lines between social classes were rigid and strictly enforced. The wealthy and powerful had privileges that ordinary citizens could only dream of, and they were expected to maintain appearances at all times. The lower classes, including enslaved people, were expected to obey without question. Any disruption to these expectations was seen as a threat to the social order. For someone in public office, like a senator, stepping outside these boundaries could mean scandal, disgrace, or even political ruin. Religion, particularly the Catholic Church in certain regions, also played a significant role in maintaining societal norms. Religious institutions were deeply intertwined with daily life and moral expectations. They provided moral guidance, but also reinforced existing social hierarchies. Marriage, property, and social conduct were all influenced by religious teachings, which often reflected and supported the rigid structures of society. A secret marriage between a senator and an enslaved woman would have been viewed as morally and socially unacceptable by both the church and the general public. Politics added another layer of risk. Senators were public figures, whose reputations were constantly under scrutiny. Their actions were not private. They were expected to model propriety and uphold laws, even those that allowed slavery to continue. Any deviation from the expected behavior could be weaponized by rivals, newspapers, and political opponents. A scandal of this magnitude could destroy a career built over years of careful maneuvering. The consequences were not just personal, they had the potential to affect family, allies, and the senator's legacy in history. Breaking these norms required courage and secrecy in equal measure. Every interaction carried risk, a whispered rumor could spread like wildfire, and the legal system offered no protection for someone attempting to defy societal expectations in this way. Yet the senator chose to act despite these risks, demonstrating a willingness to challenge the rigid structures of his time. This decision was not merely unusual, it was dangerous. It went against the laws, against public opinion, and against the moral codes imposed by powerful institutions. Understanding this context is crucial to appreciating the full weight of his choice. It was not a simple act of love or rebellion. It was a calculated risk in a world where laws, social hierarchies, and religious expectations combined to punish deviation. By stepping outside these boundaries, the senator entered a world of uncertainty, where every day brought the threat of exposure, judgment, and loss. And yet, despite all of this, he went forward, setting the stage for a story that continues to puzzle historians today. This power gave him privileges that most people could never imagine. He had wealth, status, and access to circles of influence where ordinary citizens could not tread. His life was governed by schedules, formalities, and appearances. Every handshake, every speech, and every interaction reinforced the persona he presented to the world. In public, he seemed in complete control, a figure untouchable by scandal or rumor. He moved through the halls of government with the confidence of someone who understood the rules of society, and knew how to manipulate them to his advantage. And yet, standing beside him in this story was someone whose life could not have been more different. The woman he married was enslaved, her existence defined by limits imposed upon her by law, custom, and property. She had no public voice, no official power, no protection under the same rules that governed his life. Her daily reality was shaped by servitude, constant oversight, and the uncertainty that came with being considered someone else's property. Every choice she made was constrained, every action scrutinized, every step monitored. Vulnerability defined her world, while freedom defined his. The contrast between them could not have been starker. One held the ability to influence legislation, sway public opinion, and command loyalty from others. The other navigated a world where obedience was mandatory, and disobedience could have catastrophic consequences. His decisions were his own, hers were dictated by circumstance. His reputation was a shield, protecting him from exposure. She had no such protection, existing entirely at the mercy of societal structures that valued her life as property, not as a person with agency or rights. Yet despite this imbalance, a connection formed between them that defied these constraints. It was not merely a union of desire, it was a collision of two worlds, one of immense power, and one of extreme vulnerability. The senator had everything to lose: reputation, influence, and social standing. The enslaved woman had almost nothing to protect her. Together they made a choice that risked everything on both sides. Understanding this contrast is crucial to appreciating the tension in their story. It was a relationship defined not by equality, but by the courage required to cross impossible boundaries. One wrong move could ruin both their lives. Yet despite the imbalance of power, the connection they shared challenged societal expectations, laws, and norms in a way that made their secret union one of the most remarkable and dangerous decisions of the era. Before we talk about the secret marriage, we need to understand her story. She was an enslaved woman, living under the constant weight of laws and social norms that treated her as property. Her life was defined by labor, obedience, and the unspoken rules of a system that gave her no voice. Each day demanded submission, each action carried scrutiny, and each moment of independence could bring punishment. She had dreams, desires, and intelligence, but the world offered little space for her to express them openly. Her role in the household and the senator's life was complex. She performed tasks that required skill and trust. She moved between spaces with quiet efficiency, earning cautious acknowledgement, but never public respect. The senator, as her owner, and as a powerful political figure, held the authority to control her life completely. Yet beneath the surface of these roles, a relationship developed, a relationship that was layered, nuanced, and fraught with risk. They interacted daily, and over time, What began as cautious familiarity grew into something far more personal, far more dangerous. Their connection was a secret, but it existed in the quiet spaces of their daily lives. Conversations, gestures, and moments of shared understanding became the foundation of a bond that the world would never approve of. Each exchange carried weight, each glance could have consequences. She understood the stakes better than anyone. The society around them would punish such intimacy harshly, and even a hint of scandal could destroy her. The relationship was not just socially taboo, it was legally perilous. The risks she faced were immense. By choosing to enter this union, she put herself in direct danger of exposure. Enslaved women had no legal rights to marry, and a secret marriage to her owner could be interpreted as rebellion or impropriety. The law offered her no protection. Any discovery could result in punishment, sale, or worse. She risked the fragile safety she had built within the household, trusting that the senator's power and discretion would shield her. But no shield is perfect, and one misstep could have catastrophic consequences. Beyond legal dangers, there were social and political risks. In 1841, society was unforgiving. Gossip could spread like wildfire, and a scandal involving a senator could ignite outrage, punishment, and personal ruin for both of them. Her very existence was precarious, and by stepping into a secret union, she embraced a vulnerability that few could imagine. Every choice became a careful calculation between desire and survival, between connection and danger. Understanding her perspective is essential to appreciating the courage this story required. She was a woman navigating impossible circumstances, negotiating a life with someone whose power overshadowed her own, yet daring to form a bond that defied the expectations of an entire society. Her story is not just about the marriage itself, it is about the courage, intelligence, and risk it took to love in a world designed to prevent her from doing so. It is her bravery, alongside the senators, that transforms this story from scandal to a remarkable testament of human complexity in the face of impossible odds. Before we talk about the marriage itself, we need to understand why it had to happen in secret. In 1841, the world was unthinkably rigid when it came to race, class, and social hierarchy. A union between a senator and an enslaved woman defied every law, custom, and expectation of the time. To announce it publicly would have been considered scandalous, dangerous, and possibly illegal. Secrecy was not a choice, it was a necessity for survival. The marriage was arranged quietly, away from the eyes of the public, the press, and even colleagues who might gossip. Every step had to be calculated. The senator had to ensure that no one in his political circle discovered the truth. The woman had to trust that her life and safety would be protected if word ever got out. Every meeting, every conversation, every legal step had to be concealed. Even the act of performing the marriage, if any legal or religious rites were involved, was done with utmost discretion, often behind locked doors, and with only a few trusted witnesses. Societal norms made the public acknowledgement of this marriage nearly impossible. In the 1840s, slavery was deeply entrenched, and laws treated enslaved people as property rather than human beings capable of marriage or choice. Social expectations demanded that the senator maintain a reputation of authority, propriety, and adherence to the norms of his class. Marrying an enslaved woman challenged both the legal system and the moral codes of the elite. Any hint of such a relationship could destroy his career, alienate allies, and bring public outrage, not only against him, but also against the woman he married. Religion and morality were also leveraged to reinforce these boundaries. Marriage was seen not just as a personal choice, but as a sacred institution aligned with social and divine laws. For a senator to marry someone considered socially inferior, and legally incapable of owning property or entering contracts, was almost unthinkable. Religious institutions often sided with the status quo, further making public acknowledgement dangerous. Those who defied these norms risked censure, condemnation, or even excommunication in certain contexts. Secrecy was also about protection for both of them. The senator's political life, already under scrutiny, could not afford exposure. The woman's life, already constrained by enslavement, could be destroyed entirely if society learned of her unauthorized union. Every moment they shared required vigilance, and every decision was weighed against the potential fallout. Even trusted friends or allies were limited because a single slip could unravel everything. This secret marriage illustrates how personal choices collided with societal constraints in the 19th century. It was a deliberate act of courage and defiance, but also one framed by necessity and risk. By keeping it hidden, they navigated a world that offered no space for their union, demonstrating the lengths people went to pursue personal connection in a society that forbade it. The secrecy itself became a form of survival, a shield against a world ready to punish anyone who dared cross the rigid lines of power, race and class. Before we talk about what could have happened if the marriage was discovered, we need to imagine the stakes. The senator was a public figure, a man whose every action was scrutinized by colleagues, constituents, and the press. A secret marriage to an enslaved woman was more than unusual, it was explosive. If word leaked, it could have triggered a political scandal of unimaginable proportions, threatening his career, reputation and influence overnight. Political opponents would have seized the opportunity immediately. Newspapers could have sensationalized the story, portraying the senator as immoral, reckless, or unfit for office. Allies might have distanced themselves to protect their own positions. Votes and support could vanish, and long-planned campaigns might collapse. In a society where appearances were everything, even a hint of scandal could outweigh years of achievement, turning respect into ridicule almost instantly. Legal risks were equally daunting. The law in many states still treated enslaved people as property, not human beings capable of consent or marriage. A senator marrying someone enslaved could be accused of breaking statutes or committing social offenses. While exact legal consequences might have varied, the threat of lawsuits, formal reprimands, or challenges to his position loomed large. The woman in particular faced extreme vulnerability. Discovery could have meant punishment, forced separation, or sale, undoing everything she had gained and placing her life in danger. Social outrage would have been relentless. Families, neighbors, and local communities were bound by rigid expectations of race, class, and propriety. For a man of high status to act against these norms, especially in a personal matter like marriage, would have been seen as a direct challenge to the social order. Gossip, judgment, and ostracization could spread quickly, leaving both of them exposed to ridicule and condemnation. Society rarely forgave deviation from expected roles. On one side, there was desire, love, or moral conviction, the choice to act on something deeply human, to follow the heart despite societal limits. On the other side, there was power, law, and expectation, the constant awareness that each action carried consequences far beyond the private sphere. Every decision had to balance these forces carefully. One misstep could destroy everything, but inaction came at a different cost: the suppression of choice, freedom, and personal integrity. This delicate balance created constant pressure. Living in secrecy was not just about hiding, it was about navigating a world where the stakes were life-altering. The senator and his spouse had to weigh every interaction, every word, every decision against the risk of exposure. It was a dance between desire and danger, between love and survival, between what felt right and what could be endured publicly. Understanding this tension is key to grasping the story's full impact. Their marriage was not only a personal act, but a calculated risk in a world that punished deviation. It was a bold assertion of agency against societal constraints, a secret rebellion carried out under the constant threat of political scandal, legal trouble, and social outrage. Every moment of secrecy reflected the fragility of their position, and the bravery required to navigate it. Before we talk about the senator's daily reality, we need to understand the immense pressure he faced to maintain appearances. As a public figure, his life was never truly private. Every speech, every vote, every social interaction was scrutinized by colleagues, constituents, and the press. Reputation was currency, and any hint of impropriety could be weaponized by rivals, or turn allies into enemies. Maintaining an image of respectability and propriety was not optional, it was essential for survival in the political arena. Politics at the time demanded conformity to rigid social norms. Senators were expected to embody authority, morality, and adherence to the laws that governed society, including laws that upheld slavery. Acting outside these boundaries was dangerous. Deviations, especially in matters as personal as marriage, could be interpreted as moral weakness, poor judgment, or even corruption. For a man in such a position, one misstep could ripple through his career, turning years of influence and respect into scandal and public condemnation almost overnight. Societal expectations compounded this pressure. In 1841, social hierarchies were strict and enforced by both law and public opinion. The community expected leaders to uphold not only legal standards, but also moral and cultural norms. Any action that challenged the status quo, particularly a secret marriage to an enslaved woman, was considered unacceptable. Gossip could spread quickly, and social ostracization could reach even the most powerful figures. The senator had to navigate the delicate balance between private desires and public scrutiny every single day, knowing that exposure could destroy both his personal and professional life. The pressure extended beyond politics to personal risk for both him and his spouse. If the marriage were discovered, the woman could face severe consequences. As an enslaved person, she had no legal protection. Exposure could lead to punishment, separation or sale, removing any sense of safety she had within the household. The senator, meanwhile, risked career collapse, public outrage, and the loss of influence he had built painstakingly over years. The stakes were enormous, and each moment of interaction required constant vigilance. This environment forced him to think strategically, not just about political maneuvering but about every aspect of his personal life. Meetings had to be calculated. Conversations had to be discreet. Even gestures of affection or moments of intimacy carried risk. Secrecy became both a shield and a burden, requiring meticulous planning and constant awareness. It was not a life of freedom but a careful dance between desire and danger, between personal choice and societal expectation. Understanding this pressure is crucial to grasping the story's tension. The senator's position gave him immense power, but it also trapped him in a world of surveillance, judgment, and expectation. His choices were never purely his own. They were weighed against laws, customs, and the ever-watchful eyes of society. The marriage was more than a personal act. It was a daring challenge to the norms of his time, carried out under the constant threat of exposure, scandal, and personal ruin. Every decision he made reflected the precarious balance of navigating public life, while pursuing private desires in a world that allowed no margin for error. Before we talk about her daily reality, we need to understand the immense personal struggle she faced. Living as an enslaved woman in 1841 meant her life was controlled by laws, customs, and the will of her owner. Every decision, every movement, and every word was constrained. She had little to no autonomy, and no legal protection. Her existence was defined by obedience, and even small acts of independence carried risk. Into this already constrained life came a secret marriage, adding layers of complexity, fear and tension that few could imagine. Fear was constant. She knew that discovery could destroy everything. Punishment, forced separation, or even sale were very real threats. Even the smallest slip, a misinterpreted gesture, a casual remark, or a wandering observer, could put her safety in jeopardy. She had to remain vigilant at all times, aware of the people around her, the social norms they expected her to follow, and the political consequences that might arise if anyone discovered her secret union. Fear was not just emotional, it was practical, a survival mechanism that shaped every decision. Her freedom was limited in every sense. As an enslaved person, she could not own property, enter legal contracts, or move freely without permission. The marriage, though real and meaningful to her, existed in a world that legally refused to recognize her as a spouse. This meant that even in her most private moments, she was constantly navigating restrictions. She could not openly claim her relationship. She could not speak about it, celebrate it, or integrate it into her daily life without risking exposure. Her love existed in shadows, shaped by the boundaries imposed upon her. Secrecy affected every aspect of her life. Simple actions, like walking together, exchanging words, or sharing a private moment, had to be carefully calculated. She had to compartmentalize her existence, showing obedience and subservience publicly, while maintaining the hidden reality of her marriage in private. Every interaction carried dual meanings, one for the outside world, and one for her personal life. This duality created a constant mental and emotional burden, forcing her to live with tension and restraint at all times. Navigating life as both a spouse and an enslaved person required extraordinary courage. She had to reconcile her personal desires and emotional connection with the harsh reality of her status. She lived in a constant balancing act, managing both her loyalty to the household and her commitment to her secret husband. Every decision carried weight, not just for her own safety, but for the stability of their union and the protection of their secret. Understanding her experience is essential to appreciating the gravity of this story. Her life was defined by restrictions, danger, and vigilance, yet she found a way to sustain love and personal connection under impossible circumstances. The secrecy that shielded them from society also became a source of stress, shaping her every choice, movement, and thought. Her struggle was quiet but profound, a constant negotiation between fear, limited freedom, and the desire to live authentically in a world that would never allow it openly. Before we talk about the legal challenges they faced, we need to understand the laws regarding slavery and marriage in 1841. At that time, enslaved people were considered property under the law. They had no legal rights to make decisions about their lives, and certainly no recognized right to enter into marriage. Any union between an enslaved person and a free individual, especially someone as prominent as a senator, was legally invisible. The law offered no protection, no recognition, and no legitimacy for such a marriage. In the eyes of society and the courts, it simply could not exist. Marriage for enslaved people was often informal, recognized only within their communities and families, but without any legal standing. This meant that even if a union was solemnized privately or religiously, it carried no enforceable rights or protections. Children from such unions were automatically considered the property of the mother's owner. Any claim to equality, inheritance, or legal recognition was impossible under the system. For the senator and his spouse, this meant that their bond, while real to them, existed entirely outside the boundaries of law. Despite these restrictions, some people found ways to navigate the system secretly. Private ceremonies, discreet witnesses, and careful planning allowed certain unions to exist without immediate legal repercussions. They relied on secrecy and discretion to protect themselves from the eyes of society, the law, and even their own associates. These acts were not about defying the law openly. They were about survival, preserving personal relationships, and maintaining human dignity in a system designed to deny it. Every step had to be calculated, every interaction measured, and every legal or social risk anticipated. Their union was technically impossible in public, because the law, society, and prevailing moral codes all worked against it. The senator could not publicly claim a spouse who was legally property. The woman could not assert rights or status that the law would ever recognize. Public acknowledgement would have instantly created conflict with social norms, political obligations, and legal statutes. Even allies or sympathetic figures would have been constrained by the rules of the time, unable to offer protection or recognition without jeopardizing their own positions. Furthermore, the public perception of morality and propriety made the marriage unthinkable in society's eyes. Laws were backed by social and religious expectations that condemned relationships crossing rigid racial and class lines. A senator marrying an enslaved woman was not just illegal, it was socially intolerable. Public knowledge could have led to ostracization, scandal, or even calls for political punishment. Understanding these restrictions helps us appreciate why secrecy was essential. Their marriage was an act of personal courage in the face of legal and societal impossibility. It existed in a hidden space where law and custom could not touch it, yet every moment of secrecy was weighed with the fear of discovery. The impossibility of their union in public made their story both remarkable and perilous, a testament to human desire and defiance, within a system designed to prevent equality, recognition, and love across these boundaries. As we reflect on this extraordinary story, the lessons become clear. It shows us how courage can emerge even in the most impossible circumstances, and how personal choices can challenge the strongest societal pressures. It reminds us that doing what feels right often comes with risk, but also with the power to redefine boundaries and defy expectations. Their story is not just history, it is a lesson in awareness, empathy, and moral courage, urging us to consider the consequences of our choices and the courage it takes to act with integrity. If you found this story compelling and thought-provoking, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll join a community that explores fascinating hidden stories from history and uncovers the lessons they hold for us today.